Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I want to go over an issue I've briefly went into in the past, but is an important issue because one of the problems that a lot of people have, and the reason they come to alternative technologies, is they're having all kinds of serious psychic disturbances that affect them on every aspect of their life, including physically. And there is a physical component to everything because we are physical beings. We may be made up of this kind of etheric energy, these occultons, which intermixed with psions to create a physical matter. But the bottom line is that we are a physical being in nature. And we can try and take the Rajamaji ways and say, oh, well, not really physical. Yeah, well, here's a stick. I'm going to stick you in the eye. Are you not physical? Well, you're going to scream and yell and bleed. Oh, this is not real. This is not real. Come on, let's get her. I have real problems with this. This is the reason why I left that kind of thought when I was in my early teens. Before that, I was studying yoga at 10, so it didn't take me more than a couple of years to understand, well, this just is kind of gets to ridiculousness. So we have to understand where physical beings intermixed with all this. So we are the non-physical, which really is physical, meaning energetic, informational waves or energetic fields that become denser, but they are real and they are physical. So the point is that a lot of people have these psychic disturbances. Now, there's a huge group of people who are getting these kind of psychic disturbances that are often called psychotronic attacks. These things seem to be coming from many areas, and they seem to be all over the human existence. We have all this dumping from the clouds of all these toxins. People have found stuff dumped from airplanes and so forth that are loaded with bacteria and other things to make the population stupid and sick, apparently. And, of course, this causes control, and it puts you into the systems that people make a lot of money from. Jails, hospitals, etc. So this is part of the whole system, particularly when you have a vacuous capitalistic system like the United States has, is that you've really got to generate money from the populace by getting them in prison or sick or putting them in the military. So this is a very sad state of affairs, but that's really where particularly the entire world is going, and the United States specifically. So people, I have a lot of contact with people, and the problem with people being attacked by demons and other things, or having these psychotronic attacks which seem to follow them everywhere, they equate very similarly to people who are under attack by demons or who have been possessed or followed. One of the things is that you can move all you want, but if you have demons, they will follow you wherever you go. This is generally 100% fact. So you can't move somewhere and get rid of your demons that they are based in that particular plot of land. Now, this occasionally happens, but generally is not the case. Psychotronic attack, if someone is doing something that has affected you or has you targeted, well, it doesn't matter where you go. People go hiking, they go in the wilderness, they've left their houses for days or months, they're still under attack. And why is this? What is happening? Well, we talked about this a little bit, and I have an interesting series on this of what is happening to a lot of people and what their opinions are. Now, the physical component of this cannot be ignored. We can do all we want to psychically protect ourselves, put up screens, put up radionic shields, use Hertz generators. All these things help, and they do help dramatically in a lot of instances. But of course, nothing helps unless it stops 100%. But, and life really isn't that way. But there is a component which seems to be a major component of these, what appear to be only psychic attacks, things making you think bad, opening up doorways for entities to come after you. This is all real. But what is this? Is this strictly spiritual? Is this strictly energetic in nature? Or is there a direct materialistic physical component? Well, there seems to be. There seems to be people, and of course, to a certain extent, this could be happening from an actual outside substance who has entered you. Now, when they do all these dropping these things from the clouds and everything else out there, which has been pretty much 100% verified, is that they're dumping toxins on you. There are toxins in everything. People are getting vaccinations that are loaded with toxins, and always has been. It has nothing to do with the new ones. The older ones were loaded with all sorts of things. So it seems to be some sort of nefarious plot against the human race, which is already extremely unstable and violent, to make them more unstable and violent. And since we have stabilized, because if you look at history, the amount of wars that were happening is shocking. The amount of people massacred, hundreds of thousands of them, is shocking. And this was going on all the time. You know, you tend to look at history and say, oh, it was this time in the Crusades and World War I, World War... No, you're wrong. There's been wars going on consistently almost since the beginning of time or civilization, because that's how a lot of societies have existed. The Huns, Genghis Khan, they built their empire by stealing from others because they were the hoodlums. You know, nothing really changes. Those kind of people are now the people running the world to this day still. They're the people who run organized crime. And they've had pretty much the same thing as is what happened back then, which is the fact that you learn how to kill, rob, and rape. You got a couple of weapons and a bunch of buddies, and you go and take from people. You don't have any skills. You don't really know how to do anything. So you go and take from people that have, and you enslave people to do your work for you because you're just going to kill them. And, of course, that's a motivator to work. So, has not changed. You've got to read history to know that. And it's shocking as I read more and more of it and find out, you know, it's kind of pieces together. It's not overly complicated. So since that is not a solution anymore, because wars are not really acceptable except in third world countries and in minor actions, where the big players are using the people that aren't cared about much, particularly, which is now targeting the Middle East because there's other profits there as well, oil and other connections there. And so you have all these things going. So that's what's happening. But there's really no serious wars going on in terms of big powers directly involved. And secondly, big powers have all this money spent on military. Well, they're going to have to use it, aren't they? Well, of course they're going to have to use it. They're going to have 50 aircraft carriers sitting in the harbor. So they have to be in troubled zones. So we got to keep all this in mind, and that's how things work in general. So what is that? Well, now what we're coming back is yet again, I have a person I'm working with who seems to be having some sort of demonic attacks and so forth, more of a classical occult-based thing. And has used numbers of things with minor results, which does seem to be improving, including some of our stuff, etc. But, you know, this is very, these are very difficult things to change in your life. Well, you know, everything is difficult to change in your life, to be honest with you. And if you have the right tools and you put them to work, well, generally your life becomes a heck of a lot better and you tend to have an awful lot more success. But one of the components that seems to work with this is that this became a big issue in the psychotronic attacks, where people started to cleanse themselves out of parasites and other things. And they dramatically improved. We're talking about a 70 to 80% improvement over where they were before. So there is, and we've talked about this before in terms of I have, particularly on the All Access membership in Thor's Club, I have posted there the parasites that go into your brain and tell you what to do, like a bad movie. This is an established fact that we get parasites that go in there and they tell you to do things. Now, they've done this with, and they seem to be prevalent throughout all of the, I think it's through the plant kingdom as well, because I think some diseases come from eating plants, believe it or not. So they certainly aren't immune, but certainly animals have this. So they've traced this, and they found out that the fish that had certain parasites in them actually did dangerous things so birds would eat them. They even committed suicide. I mean, it goes on with this shocking information. So everybody should tune into that particular video, the All Access members, and check that out in Thor's Club. It's just mind-bending. Of course, you know, you got to take the dope to see the real world, man. Yeah, you to see your fake world. And that's what, of course, all these hallucinogens generate. A fake reality. So the whole idea, the real reality is right there. There are parasites affecting your brain, affecting your consciousness, affecting everything else. You also have a bunch of funguses and other things in you that cause all sorts of health problems. So parasites, funguses, worms, all the things we all have heard about, yet is a reality that we must particularly deal with, plain and simple. So what happens? Now, we wouldn't think much of that, but, everybody should be taking a parasite cleanse. They're readily available on everywhere. Any kind of health food store will have it, eBay, Amazon. Look for a parasite cleanse. And there are certain herbs that work in these areas and work well. So what happens if you kick these parasites out is you're going to find that you feel great in general. And you're going to see a lot of so-called illnesses you have start to disappear, including psychological problems. So, well, that can't be. Well, it always amazes me that people ignore sick people and think that they can think right. Well, the problem with ill people is they can't help themselves. They are emotionally, mentally, and physically at their last edge. And this last edge situation means that they're not making right decisions. So the whole idea is that you are not going to do anything right if you're sick. And you're not going to have the energy to go through with certain practices, use machines, dial radionic equipment, use your amulets and cells to a level that they work for you. You're not going to be mentally up to it. This is a problem, and a serious one. So there's nothing we can do about that. If you're going to deal with sick people. So sick people need lots and lots of help, and they can virtually do nothing for themselves. So you have to become a nanny to everybody, watching what they're doing and guiding them constantly. It's a reality of that, and that's one of the problems. But, nobody wants to pay anybody to help each other. So we need robots and sex dolls. But there's 8 billion of us. Just unbelievable. So the whole idea is that these physical manifestations and these worms and parasites are not just carrying a unbelievably high intelligence to feed off of you, and then when they're finished with you to kill you and go on to another host. These are super intelligent entities. But comes with them is an entire energetic that affects your consciousness. These are consciousness demonic entities. And demons, unlike the boobs out there that worship and follow these things, are there to destroy you. That's their nature, plain and simple. They're not there to help you. They're there to destroy you. And as such, that's what they do. So they get off on your emotions, your messed upness, and virtually, even if you kill yourself or die, they're getting something from it. And they will be transferring somewhere else, whatever that may be. These are super powerful, super intelligent organisms that cannot be effectively handled through common nonsense. In a lot of ways, they are the ultimate warriors, and certainly common ignoramus science has nothing to deal with them with. Of course, I have personally had lots of success with herbals on many levels, and they work very well, especially if you make your own tinctures and not the crap you buy in the store for a high price that the potency is virtually worthless. So that is one thing, but there's lots of supplements and lots of other things you can take that are fairly good, particularly these parasite cleanses, worm cleanses. You should be taking all of that stuff to kick as much of this out of you as possible. You also should be taking a potent intestinal strengthener. So you've got to generate all those, people think they're getting something. Yogurt is just nothing but sugar that breeds more internal problems. But probiotics and other things are very important because that's where most of your immune system is. So you got to cleanse yourself, take these, and this is something everybody does. Needs to have. Now, entire societies, part of their insanity is the fact that they eat a lot of pork. And if you look at the crazy societies that have done things, you'll find out that they have a lot of pork in their diet, which is a worm-infested meat. You think you cook it enough, you do that, but some of these societies are so arrogant to think that they freeze the meat and they kill the parasites in there. Well, we're not really sure that happens, and these societies are infected by it. The Germans, the Spanish, Spanish eat huge amounts of pork, and they're all crazy mothers. So the whole idea is we need to really understand that. And pork is something, and no matter how tasty it appears, is something to stay away from. So the whole idea is that these are considerations that we need to take strongly. So if you're having any kind of problems, if you have huge amounts of negativity in your life, it may be festering right inside of you. It may be in your brain. It may be in your guts. And we are working on handling this energetically through what is called psychotronic radionic machines. And we are working on this as we speak. But there are also the component to follow up in the physical reality. Now, ultimately, we believe that we can energetically change the energies around the etheric energies that hopefully will then make the natural body kick in and kick these things out. Because, you know, when you use these kind of radionic machines, you're not working on the physical whatsoever. It has nothing to do with that. Now, in common schmientists, consider it all bunk then. Well, you're not working on the physical, it's totally worthless. We're materialists. Well, that's how they look at things, but that is not really the world. As I mentioned, we're energetic beings. Work on the energy, and that should then assist the physical. The physical will kick in its natural healing abilities, because that's what the physical does anyway. When you use an herb or something, it's stimulating the body to do something in a direct physical chemical basis. This chemical goes in and does that. So it's very physical. What is non-physical is homeopathy, which is all vibration. So you're getting into something, you take a physical pill that has the vibration in it, and then you try. So you're more into that aspect when you're using radionics. So it's not physical whatsoever. The whole idea is that when you change all these fields, your natural healing ability kicks in, and of course then you get what is considered physical changes if everything works right. But it's not working on that directly, so it's important to do that. You're dealing with energy fields, as simple as that. And these are not considered real by anybody except a person who is into subtle energy physics, as myself. So we're working on that, but there is physical components you can do right now by using these parasite, worm cleanses, all these things you can do, immune stimulants. And this will go in and they'll kick out these things. There's also all sorts of viruses and other things in your body that you need to take care of as well. Now, if someone is sick with a terrible virus, are they thinking right? Well, how could they possibly? Your brain is full of those toxins. So you're going to make all sorts of bad decisions. You're going to do all the things that you shouldn't be doing. So this is natural. But what we found here, plain and simple, is that when people do this, their symptoms of whatever's happening to them, their psychic attacks, their demonic attacks, everything is dramatically reduced, 50 to 80%. So this means that the physical component is a very strong one. We're not sure what causes one. Does parasites cause you to have schizophrenic type attitudes? Does it cause you to have some sort of mental problems? Well, we know it does. Now, what was in oxygen therapies, and I forget the author's name, there was a very small sentence stating that they went in and oxygenated some severely mentally ill people. And they got oxygen, a strong amount of oxygen through their entire body to make sure it kills whatever parasites or viruses are in them. Guess what? These severely hopeless, mentally ill patients were cured. Wow. Well, there's your connection. It doesn't come from me again. It comes from the book called Oxygen Therapies. Very big in the 80s, and still being used today with so many preparations that are out there to oxygenate the body at a high level to kill parasites and viruses and everything else. So this is here. So this was done, of course, you know, like everything else, it's done and then ignored, just like the use of intravenous vitamin C, which seems to be a miracle substance that pretty much cures everything. Yet, why isn't it being done? Well, it's too cheap. Well, that's the kind of world we're in, people. You know, get with the gnosis understanding. You're living in hell with rulers that are Satan. And, of course, everybody now thinks Satanism is wonderful. So it's just, you know, the spin has been almost completed a complete circle. So taking that into consideration, then we have to understand here what's exactly going on here. So these kind of things. So we don't know if the parasites, which are evil entities on themselves that enter your body, don't make you do all this stuff. Why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it unbalance you? Why wouldn't, to a certain percentage, or maybe large percentage, make you mentally ill, dangerous, suicidal, etc.? Why not? Your brain is not a separate from your body. It's amazing that sick people in general are as coherent as they are, considering they're pumped with poisons all the time. So the whole idea is that this is a real area. So the first thing that people will do that are having major disturbances, even people, and we're recommending this to people that are, quote, cross, meaning they have a high level of negativity around them, it means they're a giant vat that are nursing all these viruses and parasites and developing them at a very high rate. You've just been a test tube breeder of all of these types of things. How much is around you and everything else, we just don't know. How much of this stuff is even airborne? Well, we know that viruses are. Well, why couldn't everything else be? So the whole idea is this enters you, and viruses are just as bad as parasites. They enter you and you start acting strange. And this goes on to schizophrenia and so many other things. Parasite cleanses help people dramatically. So we do have to understand that there is a huge connection between the metaphysical, energetic, informational fields and what happens within the body. So the energetic fields, toxic, negative ones, enter you and cause these things to grow. Positive ones stop it. But all of this stuff is everywhere. And as I said, when you start looking into these people that are under psychic attack, that hear voices and everything else, and this is quite common. A lot of people just write it off as schizophrenia, but these kind of mental attacks are very common. A lot of this can be linked to electromagnetic disturbances, bacterias, parasites, etc. So there seems to be a whole link here between this, that this is not something that these mental conditions are not something that is a mental problem. It's being caused by the physical. So we know this now 100%, but what degree, what conditions, etc., like everything else, it takes a lot of time and study to do things. You have to do research. You have to figure these things out. And there's no interest in that. Remember, in the last 10 years, there hasn't been a single new medicine brought to the public that didn't come from public funds. The drug companies have produced nothing. These are coming from universities and private research organizations, most of them who are funded by the federal government. Nothing is going on. If you buck the system or you come out with something that will help in these areas, well, generally you're stepped on and crushed, and that's the way it goes. So everyone needs to understand that. You need to understand the physical components. If you're working on these disturbances, if you're highly crossed, if you're under some sort of demonic attack and other things, well, yes, you need the subtle energy assistance here. But don't ignore the physical battle that has to go on as well, and start taking cleansers as much as you can. This is going to dramatically assist any other work that's being done for you, and in general, this is going to, if you have a healthy body, most likely you're not going to have mental disturbances. It's just as simple as that. Until next time.